Hello, how you doing? Hope you had a good day. We're here back for another podcast. This time I'm talking to Andy Wilson. I know Andy because Andy is my brother's girlfriend's father. I'd only met Andy once or twice before doing this recording, so I don't know him that well. But we talk about a few things really. We talk about owning a farm. We start off by talking about his knee operation that he's just had. He worked in the computer systems and data control departments in Boots, a lot of technology sort of stuff. Working on the original computers when they first came out. He's saying how they were such big machines, the size of a football pitch sort of thing. That was quite interesting. We talk about working relationships, Ancestry, the Industrial Revolution, cider making, having 3 daughters, working life, travelling for work, cows, all sorts of stuff basically. So yeah, if you're ready, let's go. We're going to start. Do you want to talk about the knee operation, or do you want to just get that out of the way, or do you want to talk about it a bit?
I can do.
Should we have a quick 5 minutes on it?
Yeah.
You just had a knee operation, Andy.
Yeah, I have.
How did that go?
Well, so far, so good.
Yeah.
The operation seems to have been a success.
Yeah.
And I'm managing to get about. And I've probably, to the distress of my daughters who are trying to look after me,
Yeah.
I'm probably trying to force the pace a little bit too much.
Yeah.
In terms of what I can do.
Yeah.
So I had the operation 6 days ago, and I'm walking without a crutch or a stick now.
Yeah.
It's not a very elegant walk, but I'm walking.
It gets you
and
about.
And the girls don't like it.
No, they don't want you moving about.
No, and
What did the doctors say to you? Did they say that's all right? Or
the physio said that in the hospital that she thought that I was getting on quicker than she would have imagined.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or as a warning.
Yeah.
And then I think what's uppermost in the girl's mind is that I have a setback because I'm trying to do too much, and then you have another operation, which would be foolish.
Yeah.
So I think the byword that they're looking for is caution. So Lee, my wife, she had a knee operation. I think it's nearly 3 years ago now.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I probably anticipated that they would treat me in the way that they looked after her when she was recovering.
Yeah.
And really what they did with her was that they wanted her to do more exercise and get better more quickly.
Yeah.
And so they were constantly on her to do more and more.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, I think subconsciously I thought, well, perhaps I can do that myself, and they didn't worry about that. But I think I've probably taken it the other way, which is I've tried to do too much, and
Yeah.
they're now concerned that I'm doing too much. So
Yeah.
anyway, but apart from that,
It's gone all right.
It has gone all right. Yeah, I mean it hurts like hell,
Yeah.
but it seems to be doing the trick.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, I've not yet the pain threshold has not yet come below what it was when I was on my old knee.
Yeah.
But when that happens, then I'll know that it's been worthwhile.
Yeah. That's it.
And it's one of those things, really, Andy, where I think the sooner you get it done, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you nervous going into it, or were you sort of like?
As hell, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was as nervous as hell.
Yeah. I would be. Yeah.
Yeah. I've only had I think I've only had 2 operations before, and
Not that experienced with it then.
no.
Yeah.
No.
Some people are in and out.
I'm a bit of a natural coward as well. So when something like that's going to happen to you, you do wonder a bit. But anyway.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
hard to deal with, isn't it? For some people, I think my mum's a lot like that as well. Anything like that, she just presumes the worst. And it's not easy to. If you've got that kind of mindset, it's really hard not
Yeah,
to,
it
no
is.
matter what people tell you.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like you go away on your own and you sort of ruminate on it, don't you? And
Yeah. And anxiety is a terrible thing as well. I mean, that conjures up all sorts of things in your mind that you don't aren't particularly helpful.
Yeah, I know, yeah, definitely. So, you own a farm, Andy?
I do.
How long have you owned this farm you live on?
We've owned it for a year. Alex was our eldest daughter, was a year when we moved in.
Yeah.
And I think she's 39 this year.
Wow.
So we've been here 38 years.
Wow.
And it's had its moments, I have to say. Lots of ups and downs.
Yeah.
But mostly ups. Yeah.
Mostly ups.
Yeah.
I think Emily said to me that you kind of got it as a kind of a bit of a derelict sort of place.
It was, yeah. So 1985, I think we got it. And it had got no roof. It hadn't been lived in for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And as was the way then in the 1960s when it was bought by the previous owner, farmers were just looking for land, not houses.
Yeah.
So he bought this property, just the land,
Yeah.
and not the house, and therefore the house didn't get used at all.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know what made him change his mind, but in about 1984, he put the house plus an acre of land on the market.
Yeah.
And we'd lived in, the previous two houses we'd lived in, one was a cottage in Hovering nearby.
Yeah.
And the other one was a semi-detached house in a fairly busy area of a town called Loudon.
Yeah.
So when we saw this, it was a bit of a leap into the unknown.
Yeah.
Here we are, half a mile away from anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And
come up a nice track to get to you.
yes, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of a romantic aspect to it that I think that Lee and I
Yeah.
both sort of fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But then the downside was that inevitably you need more money than you've got. It takes longer than you imagine. And I take my hat off to Lee because she was not only got Alex, who was a year old, but we were living in a caravan and she was also pregnant with Sophie, the second child, the second girl.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was and my parents thought we were mad.
Big undertaking, yeah.
Yeah.
At that time of life, I suppose.
And we probably were. It was a big undertaking. Yeah, I think I was 28 at the time when I did it. Yeah. But,
You enjoyed it though.
Mainly, yeah.
You enjoyed improving it and stuff.
Yeah. It's given me all sorts of vocations as well.
Yeah.
So as you know, make cider. So part of the farm's cider orchard.
How many apple trees have you got here then?
200. Yeah. And apple and pear trees.
Yeah.
So out of that we get last year I think we just got over 1,000 litres of cider.
Really?
Yeah. You must take some.
Yeah. I remember having some last time, but you have to. Does it have to sort of ferment it for a while after you've made it then? Sort of?
It does, yeah. So sort of fruit picking times, September, October.
Yeah.
For the pears and the apples.
Yeah.
And then when you pick them, you have to shred them basically. It turns them into pulp.
Yeah, it's like a press, wasn't it?
And then you press it, which is when the juice comes out.
Yeah.
When you reach that stage, after that, it goes into airtight vessels, and you add yeast to it, and it'll ferment for probably 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, then you've got cider that's probably going to be, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 8% alcohol.
Pretty strong, yeah.
Yeah. And,
Is it all like cloudy then, or is it?
No, it's it's clear mostly.
Yeah.
So there's two schools of thought really with cider. One is that most of the stuff that you get, you buy in supermarkets. It'll have been pressed, it'll have been fermented, and then probably at the end of that fermentation, what they'll do is pasteurise it, which basically means heat it up very quickly and cool it down very quickly, and that kills any yeast in the
stops it from changing, I guess.
So that stops it from fermenting anymore.
Yeah.
So they'll do that at the end of the fermentation process with commercial ciders, and then they'll put the fizz in by adding CO2. They inject gas basically into it, and that's what gives it fizz out of the bottle.
Yeah.
What I do this with a group of mates, including you. And
I got involved.
And what we decided really was that we wanted fizzy cider. Don't like still cider.
Yeah.
And so the process of fermenting, then pasteurising it,
Yeah.
And then injecting gas. Well, the injecting gas bit is quite difficult and expensive.
Is it?
And the alternative is what you do is you ferment it until it stops. Then you bottle it, and for each bottle, you put a teaspoonful of sugar in, which starts it fermenting again to a limited degree.
Yeah.
And that's what gives us its fizz in the bottle.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And
like
so,
a natural fizz.
Yeah, it's a natural fizz.
Is it? It's. I guess it's not as strong as like a.
Oh no, it can be. In fact, if you put too much fizz in, too much sugar in, as soon as you take the lid off, a fountain off, it'll hit the ceiling. Yeah.
It blows up.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's cool. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like a kind of. Were you always? I suppose in the farm generally, were you like? What got you interested in having a farm? Like, why did you want to? Did you just want to own your own land and do your own thing?
Well, I think it probably started with Lee, my wife.
Yeah.
So she's always been keen on dogs. She's always had a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
And having somewhere where she can keep dogs and walk them.
Yeah.
Was always quite nice. And to be fair to Lee, it was me as well. Living in the sort of open countryside.
Yeah. It's
quite a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from, really, Andy.
Yeah.
But to start off with, we just got an acre of land and the house and
played around.
Yeah, and that was it. Yeah.
Did you get people to help you like with the house, with the building then, or was you?
I got a builder to do it because I was working full time at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we got a builder to do it.
Yeah.
And ran out of money inevitably. So it really didn't get finished for quite a number of years.
Just sort of put things on hold while you earn more money.
So we were
passion project.
It was a passion project.
Yeah.
But it meant cold winters and things like that. Really, which isn't ideal when you've got a little kid.
No.
So I feel a bit guilty about that sometimes. Yeah.
No, I think it's character building, all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, no, it has been. And I've learned so much.
Yeah, I used to live with my dad in a caravan, and that was cold.
Really, was that at near the sailing lake?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Launceston.
Yeah.
And I think he just didn't know what to do really, so I ended up living there on his own. But I was there with him sort of half the time. And looking back, I've got very fond memories of it. So it was interesting. It was different to what most people do in their upbringing. But yeah, it was bloody cold in the winter.
Yeah, well, we were in a caravan to start off with. I think we moved in February.
Yeah.
And for the next 7 nights, 7 successive nights, the pipes underneath the caravan burst every night.
Really?
So before I went off to work every morning, I had to repair the copper pipes underneath the caravan, only for them to burst the following night. So
freezing.
It was cold, bloody cold.
Yeah.
But no, it's been worthwhile in the end. It's a nice place to live, really.
Yeah.
To the degree that Alex, our eldest, is she's having one of the barns converted, so she's going to live next door in the family. Yeah,
it's going to be nice, that, isn't it?
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
I was talking to her about it yesterday, actually. Yeah.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, she was saying she's really looking forward to it. And I didn't get to ask her if she said she's got a house on for sale, but she hasn't. I didn't ask her if she's got anyone who wants to buy it yet.
I don't know. I think that they've had one couple that have been around twice and seem very keen, but whether or not
you don't know until they
that'll materialise into a sale. I don't know, Andy.
Yeah, the market's changed a bit because when I bought a house probably picked it about a year ago now and been there for sort of 7 or 8 months, and the marketplace at that time was just like you just buy it as soon as it hits the market.
Really?
Whereas now it seems to have just sort of levelled out again.
Yeah, it doesn't it?
And the prices have gone down. So it's
have they?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's a house on our road now which must have been worth sort of, I don't know, maybe sort of 10-15% more, and now it's sort of the same price as our house, and we're sort of looking at it going, could have had that if we waited.
Well, it's like all investments, it's the long term, isn't it?
It doesn't really bother me, but it's kind of it's just interesting how the market's changed, really. But that'd be nice, wouldn't it, when they live here? They're keen to be.
I think so. I hope so. Yeah. I'm very keen to have them here. Yeah. It'll be lovely.
It'll be cool, won't it?
It will. It'll be great. Yes, I've got 2 little kids.
Yeah. It's a good place for kids to grow up on a farm.
Well, all 3 of us grew up here. I think they enjoyed it. Yeah.
I think Emily's like, whenever I talk to Emily about it, she's like extremely fond of it, and it's she comes here a lot.
She does.
So she must enjoy.
She does now. She's very good to me, Emily. Very good indeed.
Yeah.
Since Lee and I split up, she's looked after me a lot. She's been very, very good. Yeah.
That's good. How was your before we talk about like work and stuff, how was your school experience?
I grew up in Nottingham. I was born in Wilford Hill, which is a suburb of Nottingham.
Yeah.
Went to school there, Hayman County Primary School. It was good. Memorable things. I was football mad at the time, so I used to play a lot of football. I was very keen.
Yeah.
Big disappointment was that two of my best mates got into the Nottinghamshire representative 11 Nottinghamshire team.
Yeah.
I didn't. I came second. I was goalkeeper. So yeah, that was a big disappointment. Yeah. What else? Yeah, I was very fortunate at school. It was a great school. Very very good indeed.
You quite an academic pupil, or
not really? No, and I think that's probably. My dad was an academic, so he was he got a very good degree at Cambridge in modern languages.
Right.
So he speaks many. Well, he's dead now, but he spoke many languages fluently, unusual ones as well.
What did he do for his career?
He ended up as an accountant, actually.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where quite often it doesn't matter what degree you get.
Yeah.
It's how you develop your mind around that degree.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, some of the best people I've worked with in my job's really around computer systems and the use of data. And some of the best people I've ever worked with have been historians and physicians, not physicians, physics
scientists.
Scientists. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the best people I've worked with have been. They've not been doing at work something that they learnt at university.
Yeah.
They've been doing something completely different, but they develop their mind through.
And you say best, like, do you mean in terms of work, or just generally as people? You mean
both, actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're going to sort of lead a business and get a large group of people doing complicated stuff, you don't just do that with technical abilities. You've got to be a good communicator.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to talk of a vision and get people to buy into that vision.
Yeah.
And then you've got to carry those people with you as you go through that.
Yeah.
And there will be, I mean, some of the best times I was with some of the best guys I've worked with were, around a failure. You have a failure, and then what do you do around a failure?
Yeah.
I mean,
you mean they've had a big failure?
Well, there's been a big failure in terms of, I can remember a couple of projects where it wasn't good at all. But it's under those circumstances that people show the true mettle.
Yeah. So I suppose that's interesting, because I've been asking some people, like, what do you think about the sort of balance between talent and work ethic?
Yeah.
And I suppose, how do you feel about that? Like, what do you think that balance is? Because obviously some people are talented naturally, but they don't want to put the work in, and other people maybe don't have the talent and they're a bit of a jack of all trades, but they're sort of keen to get stuck in. I don't know. It's do you ever think about that? Maybe not.
I do. And the reason I've gone quiet and I'm looking into the sort of mid-distance,
it's all right.
is I'm just trying to remember people in those sort of categories.
Yeah, take your time. It's fine.
Yeah, I've met talented people who are lazy and work for one, actually.
Yeah.
And work shy.
Yeah.
And I've worked for people who are very work focused, but not necessarily, well, in my opinion, not particularly talented.
They don't work that smart. They just work hard.
And I found the latter of that particularly taxing. There was a bloke who was not good with people, and he was, not good with quite a lot of things, but he was very hard working and very successful because he was so hard working. He'd managed a huge group of people.
Yeah.
And to a man and woman, they found him very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the perfect, of course, is that you get a talented person who's well motivated and has got a great vision.
Yeah.
The danger there is, if they're really talented, that they realise that the rest of the world isn't as talented as they are. And in other words, they can be patient and understand that other people might take other people longer to get there than it actually took them to get there.
Yeah, understanding, it's like empathy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Understanding other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's always that going on in any business, I think. Some people sort of achieve more than others, but it's kind of, yeah, you kind of have to be aware of that. I feel like that about our web guy who does
He's good, isn't he?
He's really good.
Yeah.
But he says he's not actually. He says, I don't really understand other people's feelings sometimes, and feel like I'm a bit sort of got like autism or something.
Really?
Yeah. But I said, well, I don't really agree with that, because I said, I think you come across to me as someone who's very aware of it. And then maybe if he thinks that of himself, maybe he's aware of it all the time and he's always thinking about it, you know. But,
and compensated, probably.
Yeah, but I think he communicates with every different person in the building. Really,
right.
He's naturally like got the
Well,
managing.
he's one of the, the risk of going off me onto you, but, from what I hear from Adam, he's one of the key drivers of your business,
Yeah.
He's really one of the people that's made a big difference there.
100%,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
And I sing his praises all the time. I think he's a very,
Yeah.
professional person. But yeah, it's interesting, working with people and relationships, isn't it? Work relationships. Yeah. I suppose.
So we were on school, I think, weren't we?
Yeah, so you weren't too academic in
No,
school.
it wasn't too academic, and that came as a bit of a disappointment to my dad, I think. Bless him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I passed my 11 plus, and bless my parents, they put me through an expensive school for secondary education. Even though it was clear that I wasn't never going to be an academic, and I'm sure that they found that quite taxing sometimes, continuing to pay for me, even though the sort of fantastic grades weren't coming in. It was great education, absolutely great education. But I didn't get to university, and a variety of reasons for that. And so I started work at 18 in the computer room at Boots in Nottingham.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
what were you doing there?
Well, to start off with, I was a computer operator, which basically meant at the sort of lowest end of the scale that when a printer ran out of paper, you put some more paper on it. You sort of moving through it. I mean, these are the days where a computer used to occupy the size of a football pitch, and stored probably a tenth of the data that you've got on your wristwatch at the moment. So there were all sorts of storage devices, tapes, discs that you had to change. And then you had to also the sort of upper end of the operation scale. You had to schedule processing runs of various programs. Make sure the data was available for those processing runs. And what we did at Boots really was, we did everything. So we ran the payroll for 60,000 employees. We did all the invoicing and goods ordering and scheduling, and then ordered the goods in from suppliers. So there were all these computer programs that did this. There was, I don't know, I think there was something like 400 people in the IT department when I started.
Wow.
And that was the nerve centre of Boots. And they were a tremendous employer, Boots were. So it comes from back to the sort of, I think he was a Methodist, Jesse Boot, but he believed in investing in people, particularly young people. And still the legacy that he was there when I went to Boots was that the training that you received was fantastic.
Really?
They invested a lot in training and they invested a lot in people. So I think I was pretty fortunate actually that I went to Boots and that I received the training there. So
you got a good start regardless of any.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and at the time, degrees in information technology were very, very few and far between. And in fact, the sort of Boots approach to technology was they couldn't recruit people because there were no people out there to deal with technology. So they would take what they decided to do was take a lot of the brightest lads out of the warehouses, lads and girls out of the warehouses, and train them to do the IT stuff. Which is what they did.
Just take them out of their own workforce.
So in the end, I got the equivalent really of a. It wasn't a degree course, but it was something similar to what you'd receive at university. Training in IT.
Right. Okay.
And then went on to working. I went from computer operations to computer programming.
Oh, that's interesting. So you did computer programming. So how long did you work there, and when did you move on from?
I worked at Boots for 11 years. So from when I was 18 to when I was 29, I'm struggling with all the numbers.
Don't worry about that. Just general stuff.
Yeah, so I worked there from 18 to 29.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I was getting a bit frustrated. And I was working for a guy that I found difficult. As I'm sure people have found me difficult over the years. And I sort of had a falling out with him over something and nothing.
Yeah.
And then saw an advert in the local paper, the Nottingham Evening Post, for a consultancy company.
Right.
And applied and got a job there.
Right.
And so that was an IT consulting company that operated out of Nottingham. Yeah. So I went there.
Yeah. How long were you there for? More numbers.
Yeah, I think I was there for 9 years.
I suppose you were pretty hot on the computers by then, so you just...
Well, I mean, this company, I'd only ever dealt with a company like Boots, which was publicly owned. It had got shareholders, it behaved in an ethical fashion, and, you know, you could rely on the sort of morality of what they did and, you know, them behaving ethically. I stepped out of that into this organisation that was owned by a single guy, who ruled it with a rod of iron, and you could almost guarantee that he wouldn't behave ethically. And he would take any number of liberties with the people that worked for him. So teams of people would find themselves driving in their own time at their own expense, the length and breadth of the country, to earn consultancy fees working for various clients. That was the downside. The upside was that I got tremendous exposure to financial services, TV, food, what else? Insurance, part of financial services. So I worked in retailers, I worked in loads of market sectors on contract assignments. So I learned.
So you travelling to places?
Yeah, I used to commute daily to Bedford or from here, which is nearly 2 hours.
Different businesses.
Yeah, that was a TV company, and then Welling Garden City, that was Tesco, doing technology contract work there. Pearl Assurance in Peterborough, Yorkshire TV, Central TV in Birmingham. So I did all of that, and then and East Midlands Electricity actually had quite a long stint up there as well, which was interesting.
So it's interesting. I suppose it was really interesting to just see all the different businesses and
it was,
how it worked.
It was, and the way that different people worked. It was great. I felt so. The downside was working for this guy who was not very nice.
No.
And the upside was actually getting exposure to all sorts of things all over the country and learning an awful lot. It was great.
How big was that company then? Like how many people worked?
There was about 110 people in the end. And in the end, I got promoted to be the operations director. So I stopped doing the contract work, and I was sitting in the office, you know, with all the operations team, which was about 100 people. The rest being, you know, management and sales team.
So you're sort of managing quite a lot of different people.
It was interesting. It was challenging.
How do you find managing people? Did you sort of naturally take to it, or you?
I loved it.
You liked it?
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Communication with people.
Well, and it's, you know, just trying to make things better for folks. Which is quite difficult sometimes.
Because some people won't accept it, maybe. Or?
Well, in this business where there was this guy who was not very nice. And then there was a lot of people at the sort of grassroots shop floor level who were very nice. And, you know, he'd issue directives saying, I don't care. They've got to drive at their own expense to Welling Garden City, be there for 7 hours, then drive back. I'm not putting them up in a hotel. Well, actually, giving that message to a load of people to do that, it's not a very nice thing to have to do.
Forced to do it.
Do
you think he was too detached from the actual people?
I don't think he cared.
No.
He just wanted his money. You know, whatever it took, and if somebody left, then they'd recruit somebody else. That was his way. It was
cutthroat.
It was cutthroat.
Not very modern, is it?
Well, it's not sustainable, Andy.
No,
is it?
No.
You know, if you get a reputation for that sort of thing, then, you know, people will leave. And people won't join.
That's it. You've got to be caring for people and sort of, as we said earlier, like empathy, understand people, and you've got to care about them, haven't you? Because they're working for you every day. like you said, it's kind of like it's a mix. If someone's able to sort of show a vision and sort of bring people along with them, like you said, get people on board.
Yeah,
it's a skill. I don't really know a lot about it really, but it's just.
Well, it can materialise itself in spectacular success as well.
Yeah.
You know, so you get a small group of people, you get a bright idea, and you sell that vision, and people will crawl over broken glass to make it succeed if they believe in it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where all these, you know, that's where the Googles of this world and, you know, Facebook and all the rest of them, you know, they did that bit at the early start.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can get that right, it's
sort
great
of like
for
good foundations, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You got good people in the business, and it sort of brings others along. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. What can I ask you about? You said on one of your messages that you're interested in Ancestry.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done quite a lot of that sort of research about your own family, or?
Yes, I have actually. It became a bit of an obsession at one stage.
Yeah.
You know, is all I could think about.
When did you start doing that?
Well, probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
No, a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, various family members had done bits and bobs of ancestry research.
Yeah.
My dad did some. Mum did a little bit.
Yeah.
I've got an auntie that's done some as well. But, you know, I just find it fascinating where you come from.
Yeah.
You
Learning
know.
about the people what they did and who their relationships were with. Yeah.
Well, watching the social trends as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the big changes for my family, or various, you know, so you go back and you go back to your grandparents' generation, you're talking about 4 families. Great grandparents, you're talking about 8 families, and you know, you keep going back, and there's more families that you're looking at.
Yeah.
But nearly every part of my family, going back 7 or 8 generations, comes from either Nottinghamshire or North Derbyshire.
Yeah.
You know, so they're all from around that area. And so you go back into the 1700s, if you're lucky enough to be able to find the records, and most people are involved in agriculture. That's what they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible existence, you know. I mean, you earned hard work, you earned pittance, you lived in squalor, you got no education, no medical treatment, nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, so as you go through the 1700s and then go into the 1800s, things begin to change. You know, there's changes in technology, there's changes in farming technology. And you can observe with all the different lines of the family that around about 1830 to 1850, people start moving out of farming jobs, moving into the newly built suburbs of cities, Nottingham mainly in my case. So they were coming from farming jobs and going into lace manufacture or iron foundries or working on railway engines.
Interesting, isn't
or doing pharmaceuticals. And they're all, you know, we talked at the start of this about moving out into the country and living in a nice rural location.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have seen it like that. It would have been completely the opposite. They'd lived in rural squalor, and then they get the opportunity to live in a new house that's got plumbing and, you know, and toilets. Wouldn't have electricity yet, but, you know,
more comfortable.
Absolutely, and you know, in the winter they're warm. You know,
that's how it's really interesting, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So you know,
it swung around completely.
Absolutely. You know, and they'd made it. So you know, all of these people were not flocking in, but you know, over a period of 10 or 15 years, the countryside was emptied basically of people going into these new industries in suburbs of or places like Nottingham, Derby, and Leicester, Lincoln.
Yeah. How far back were you able to sort of find then? Like
the furthest back I got was about 1590. So part of the family comes from Colston Bassett in South Nottinghamshire, on the border of Leicestershire. And we got back to about 1590 there. And that's part of the Giles/Crabtree family that my mother's side of the family came from eventually. And I've actually been out there, and there's There's an old church there, it's derelict now. But there's still some tombs of the family there. One of the ones that I mentioned. Yeah.
Wow, you actually see it yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, that was the best. I guess they were quite hard to read by that sort of age.
But they are, yeah. But
yeah.
So it's been fascinating seeing all of that, and then it's changed since as well. It's changing now, indeed.
Yeah.
So I mean, the change at the moment really is. Well, the change back then in the 1840s was that everybody came into the suburbs and then they went to work in the cities.
Yeah.
And they all went to work together in either a factory or some kind of shop or whatever. Change now is that there's a lot more working individually from home, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Is that you can work from anywhere. And it's sort of like places like this, a farmyard, there's not much difference to living anywhere because you can get things delivered and it's weird, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So I mean, it's still on its head again.
It's kind of good though, I think, because all these places that have been abandoned. I watched something recently with my dad, and there's these villages in Europe, in sort of France and Spain, that have been abandoned through the same thing, really, industry, I imagine.
Yeah.
And people are buying them for sort of the price of a house,
really,
and doing them up. And villages, yeah.
Right.
So you spend sort of €200,000 and you get nine houses in the middle of nowhere.
Really?
And it's it was really interesting. So there was one in Brittany, in France, that had done it, and it was just a group of terrace houses. It was massive, and now they've got like B&B going on there and all sorts. People are coming to stay and things. But yeah, I thought it was interesting how we're reusing those old buildings that were wasted because they were just doing nothing, weren't they? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and a lot of these warehouses in Nottingham now are flats.
Yeah.
So the old leather works and places where they used to do, a lot of clothing manufacture in Nottingham. They've all
changed.
Apartments now.
Yeah. I'm flitting about all over the place because that's what I do.
Don't you worry.
Have you still got any cows?
No.
You have to
I reached the stage about 4 years ago where I realised that I was retired. it wasn't completely by design, partly by design. I realised that I was retired. I got a piece of work that I was doing for somebody, and it involved acquiring a company. And if they'd been successful in acquiring the company, they wanted me to run it for a year or two.
Yeah.
They weren't successful in acquiring it.
Sort of caught yourself then, and you went, wait a minute.
And that was it. And I thought, well, that draws the line under it, really. I don't need to work anymore. Yeah. Around the same time, there were all sorts of changes going off in my life at the time.
Yeah.
But also, I got cows, and I really enjoyed them.
What kind of cows did you have?
They were Lincoln Reds, the best cows in the world.
Yeah.
I'd had them for 20 years and bred them.
Yeah.
And they reached the stage where a productive life for a cow's 15 years or so.
Yeah.
When I say productive, that means that's how old. That's the sort of limit when they can give birth to calves.
Yeah.
So when they get beyond that point, they're not any use to you. And I'd bred all these animals, so pretty well all the animals I had on the farm had been bred here. And I was quite attached to them. And I reached the stage where I realised that if I left it, what would happen is that they'd get ill and possibly die.
Get TB or something like that.
Well, whatever. They're getting old and they could die. I'd had one die on me already. And you can't rationalise with animals about suffering. All you
can do is sort of observe it.
Well, it is really, or get the vet in to finish them off.
Yeah.
So I thought that probably the best thing to do was, if I retired, they did as well. So I got 15 cows at the time, or 15 animals at the time.
Yeah.
And 7 of them were young enough to breed.
Yeah.
So I gave those to a friend of Alex's because he was setting up a herd, and I just wanted to see them in good shape.
Yeah.
So I gave those to him, and the rest I sent for slaughter. And it was one of the worst days of my life because one of them was, she was great. She followed me everywhere. She'd do anything I asked, really.
Like a pet, really.
She was great. Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
But
I suppose so. You got other people to help you with like the sort of all the breeding and stuff because I imagine it's quite challenging.
Not too bad. basically you have to get a new bull every 2 years.
Right.
Because cows will start breeding when they're 2. And they shouldn't breed with their father.
No.
Yeah. So you get a bull in, it'll mate with a cow. She gives birth to a heifer.
Yeah.
2 years later, that heifer's ready for mating.
Yeah.
So you can't have the father around at the same time.
No.
So top and bottom of it is that every 2 years you've got to get a new bull. And you said it's quite a lot of hard work involved. It's not really. So in the summer, all you do is put the bull and the cows out together in grass fields. They mate.
Get on with it themselves.
And that's it. The hard work's in the winter for 2 reasons. One is you have to bring them in because the weather's bad and you've got to feed them. So there's feeding, which is a daily chore. And then there's mucking out, which is probably most weekends.
Yeah.
And then there's the calving. So you're on duty for calving. So if you're always as well to be about in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
So if you see a cow calving, then you've got to be about to help with that.
Got to deliver it for them maybe, because some of them have trouble with it, sort of thing.
Well, one of the reasons I picked Lincoln Reds was, 2 reasons. They're very good natured, they're very nice natured animals, but also they're easy calvers.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so an alternative would have been there's a type of cattle called Belgian Blue.
Yeah.
And they are enormous, and they never calve naturally, very rarely.
Really?
So they pretty well always have to have a cesarean operation.
Wow.
Yeah, and that is high maintenance. That's high workload. But
You've got to be serious about it to be doing that. Yeah.
Lincolns are different. They'll calve naturally more often than not.
Nice.
I think we had probably 3 or 4 bad outcomes from something like 50 births.
Yeah.
So that I can remember, and they were horrible. But the rest of them were fine. And it's very heartwarming to see them born.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember when I came here. I think I've been here once before. I don't think it was twice, but I remember coming and they were there, and we sort of go to the fence and they just wander over. It's nice.
Nice animals, yeah, they are. I always think they're cleverer than horses, cows.
Yeah.
They're very affectionate.
Yeah, they're quite sort of chilled out, aren't they? Really?
They are, yeah. You've got to be careful with bulls. The last bull that we had, Peter, he was great. You simply can't trust them because they can turn very quickly.
Yeah.
But his problem was that he liked his back scratched. And when he wanted his back scratched, he used to lean on you. And
really?
Yeah, if you were against something hard and he leant on you, he weighed 1.3 tons. So,
like
you
a
can
car
have an
leans on
accident. Yeah, it is,
yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you about your electric car. You've got an electric car, haven't you?
Yeah, just got that.
It's just around the corner, I think.
Yeah. Is
Is that your first one?
It is, yeah.
Did you like it?
I love it.
Because you've got battery storage, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got solar panels and battery storage, yeah.
So you're just charging it straight from that, are you?
In the summer, yes, it seems to be charging up pretty well in the summer. So I get sort of free petrol, if you like, during the summer, but in the winter you've got to buy it in, really.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot cheaper. The trouble is that you have to invest loads of money in your solar panels and your battery, and then electric cars cost, I don't know, 50% more than petrol or diesel cars do, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah. How long have you had your solar panels for then?
4 years, I think. Yeah.
And how long is it before they sort of pay you back, or does it take a long time?
Well, I think actually getting the car is going to decrease the payback time. It'll accelerate it.
Yeah. Because you're just not paying petrol, yeah.
No, I think probably they reckon, well, as it was when we had them installed, they reckoned you're getting payback within 7 years. Yeah. But since then, energy prices have gone crazy. So it'll probably reduce that time to 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, you probably got it at the right time, really. Yeah, I was wondering about the... I don't know if it's going on around here. I don't know if you mentioned it last time we were here, but around where I live, there's a lot of solar farms going up. And it's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because there's a lot of sort of protests to it around where I live.
Is there? On what grounds?
Just, I don't know really.
What, we don't want it near our house?
Well, there's a bit of that, but there's also sort of like, we're farming on this land and stuff like that.
Well, that's exactly it. So,
what do you think about all that? Yeah.
Well, I don't think we should be converting fields to solar farms.
No.
There's enough roofs of warehouses and houses and factories around the country to cover those with solar panels.
That's what I think, yeah. I don't think you should be allowed to build a house without a solar
Exactly.
panel.
No, I'm with you, Andy.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I think that this nation's going to have a bit of a problem with food security in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So it depends how you look at it, but we produce something like, I don't know, 50 to 65% of our own food.
Yeah.
The rest is imported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that quite a high percentage compared to other places?
No,
or?
it's not.
No.
So you'd find in France that it's
much higher.
Much higher, yeah.
Sort
And
of
in
80,
Ireland,
90.
yeah, it's a lot higher.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a very densely populated country.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But we haven't got as much sort of... it's not in our blood as much as it is in sort of... The French population seem to be way more into it.
Better connected to the land, aren't they?
Yeah. And it's massive. Like you say as well, there's loads more room, isn't there? I think there's like 5 times more room for each person in France.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot more land mass. Yeah.
So it's... I suppose it's an interesting topic. I don't really know what I think about it, really. I've not really asked many people about it or researched it much, but I saw one on the way here, a sort of banner about it, and I thought, I'll ask you about that, because but it makes sense to me. That I thought that straight away, like, why aren't they putting it on roofs? I suppose that it's just from their point of view, the people who are doing it, the companies that are doing it, it's just the easiest way of getting them down, isn't it?
It is. You get more bangs for your buck in a 100-acre field than you will out of I don't know, 300 warehouses or something like that.
And you've got to deal with every single one of them.
Exactly. So for each of the ones that you put on a warehouse, you've got to put a battery there, and then you've got to put an inverter and all the rest of it. Whereas if you do just one field, you've got a lot of shared infrastructure, which makes it cheaper to install, a lot cheaper. But it takes substantial amounts of productive farmland out of the equation, which I think is wrong.
Yeah, it makes sense. Was your last job at Experian?
No, Thomson Reuters.
Thomson Reuters.
Thomson Reuters is a conglomerate, but it's largely known because it's a news agency.
Right.
The Reuters news agency is still on the BBC, ITV, whatever. In the papers, you'll see accreditation of articles and photographs to Reuters news agency.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And so they're a conglomerate, so they do many things, but most of it's around publishing.
Yeah.
And the bit that I was involved in was the publication of regulatory and legislated compliance legislation.
Yeah.
So I worked for a business that provided information about regulatory compliance to tens of thousands of businesses around the world. And
so compliance is like, what is that?
Well, what's compliance? Anti-slavery.
Yeah.
Anti-slavery legislation varies by country, but they're mostly similar. So if you are running a vegetable business in Lincolnshire, you'll employ gangs of labourers to harvest this. How do you ensure that you are observing and complying with anti-slavery regulations in the UK? So those people need to know what anti-slavery is. I in detail. You get 10 Romanians living in a caravan, and they don't get paid. All they get is food. That sounds pretty much like slavery to me. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But people who are employing need to know what these things are.
So you're going to big companies and making sure they know the rules, basically.
Well, the penalties for big companies who don't comply with this sort of regulation, or any companies, even small ones, are crippling. Put you out of business.
Put it in,
The big numbers come with financial institutions who aren't complying with regulation, like anti-money laundering. There's a number of instances that I can remember where big banks, high street banks in the UK, have been effectively providing money processing routes for Iranians who are named on registers saying that they are crooks, basically. Those banks have been fined hundreds of millions of dollars because they've actually been processing money for money laundering on behalf of some of those people. So the big banks need to know how to comply with anti-money laundering. But then there's all sorts of other compliance as well. So the business that we used to run in Thomson Reuters, one of the biggest sellers in terms of courses was how to deal with guns in the workplace. So pretty well every employer in the States, regardless of what industry, whether it's a shop or whether it's a bank or a pharmacy or whatever, every employer in the States has to ensure that their employees have been on a course that says how to deal with somebody when they come into the workplace with a gun.
Right, to sort of shoot the place up.
Well, it could be, or it may be not. But what do you do under those circumstances? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So you were doing this all around the world then?
Yeah. No, we had business in 50, 60 countries.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was.
So the people that you were going to sort of work with, the businesses you were going to see, were you kind of like? So I don't know anything about this, obviously. Were you kind of like instructed to go and see this company because they need sort of checking, or did they sort of come to you for the help, or was it? Do you know what I mean? Was it? Would you just have a list of people that you need to go and talk to,
right?
And make sure they're doing the right thing, or did they come to you and say we want you to have a look at?
You get a variety of approaches, Andy. So. Most of the work that we did was with financial services sector, so insurers, banks, pension funds, all those sorts of things. Yeah. Most of the work was with them, and what a lot of them used to do was they used to take a bank in Canada. So this bank that we were working with in Canada generally used to go to local legal firms and say to the local legal firms, come into our business and tell us where we need to be more careful about how we deal with regulation or legislation. Anti-slavery, anti-money laundering, how to deal with a gun in the office, all those sorts of things. So that they would hire local lawyers who would go in, and then for significant fees, they do a bespoke piece of work on, right, you're in retail banking in the state of Alberta, and these are the laws that apply to anti-money laundering in the state of Alberta. Yeah,
because of all the federal law in different places.
That's right. Yeah. So the lawyer would then write up what that company's got to do to comply. And what the business that I was managing was trying to do was, it was trying to. It was quite successful actually. It offered them a tool, a sort of a system. And through this system, they could fire in an inquiry and say, I'm a retail bank in Alberta, tell me all the regulations that I need to be careful of and do things for. And our system would go through all the documents that it got on Alberta, and then it would provide feedback to them to say, these are the things that you need to take care of. And when you compared the sort of costs that they would incur with local lawyers, compared to the cost of our system, the local lawyer costs would probably run into $300,000. The cost of the system was $20,000, and out of that you would get a lot more. So your original question was, how do we find these folks? Well, you get some marketing folks. The marketing folks would look at the sector, and take banking sector. There are banking associations in most countries around the world. They'll list all the members. And it also lists what they do, whether they do retail banking, mortgages, insurance, personal loans, credit cards, all those things. So because
you had such a cheap system way of doing it, you're able to just go to them and say, do you want to do it this way instead?
Exactly. So you go through the lists, you'd find out who you think might be a candidate organisation, and then you'd put together some sort of ideas about how you could help them, and then start doing calling them or going to see them. Did
you enjoy that job then?
I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
What was the best part of it?
I think actually the final bit that I did before I left. So it was clear to me 12 months before I left that they were going to merge this business into another aspect of the business, and that meant that they wouldn't need all the managers that they got, most notably me, after that point. So I decided, with their permission, at the start of that 12 months, to just do a strategy and competitive review of how this business was working around the world, compared to the market need
Yeah.
And compared to its competitors.
Yeah. See where you stood, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it was fascinating, and actually determining a strategy on that. And in fact, what became clear to me was that they'd only got, I don't know, less than 1% market penetration.
Wow.
This company had. So the opportunity for doing more business was phenomenal.
How many people worked there at that time, do you think?
There was about 200 people in the business at that time. Yeah,
1%. Wow.
Yeah.
So not doing.
But you know, with the collateral that they got, the existing collateral, they wouldn't need to add any more people or collateral in terms of data to be able to work with a lot more organisations.
Yeah. Interesting sort of research stuff then, really.
Yeah. No, sorry. The company that I worked with before that was Experian, which was a credit reference agency.
I was before that.
Yeah, so that was my best job ever.
Yeah.
That was where I worked for a guy who was a physics graduate. He'd moved into the world of data and intelligent systems. So this is going back into the 1980s now.
Yeah.
You know, all the talk is of artificial intelligence now. In those days, it was all about data analytics and the power of data analytics, which has been around since the 1960s, really. And a lot of what's called AI now these days is actually analytics. But you know, we were moving into a new world then, and when I started working for him, it was in a division of this company that would numbered, I think, 40 people, and had a turnover of about £2.5 million.
Yeah.
By the time we'd finished, we'd got 1,000 people and turnover of £1 billion.
Wow.
That was over a 15-year period.
Jesus.
And we'd operated out of one country, the UK. No, two countries, UK and US.
Yeah.
And in the end, we set up businesses in 40 new countries.
Yeah.
So we were working around the world.
So you were with the business when it was just going.
Yeah,
up
it was.
and up.
It was the most incredible experience. Yeah. It was. He was taxing him, you know, and
yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
the big regret I got really is that that was a phenomenal work opportunity, a life opportunity.
Yeah.
But the downside to it was that I was always away from home and didn't see as much of the family as I should have done.
Yeah.
And Lee brought the kids up pretty well on their own, you know, with me playing a bit of a side part. You know.
Can't have it all, can you?
You can't, no.
So you really got on with the guy who ran that place?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah,
Did you work quite closely with him?
Yeah, I did. No, he's a phenomenal guy.
Yeah. You still speak to him, or?
He's moved house, and I seem to have lost his details. Because one or two things have happened here, which means that I haven't got his details. Yeah. He's moved house, but I was seeing into him about 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
How's your knee?
All right.
You're all right,
yeah. Talking seems to make it better.
Yeah, takes your mind off it. Nice one.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I'm bad at...
It's all right.
I'm bad at... I spoke to someone recently, they're like, you should organise your questions into an order. Which I probably do need to start doing.
I don't know. I think you need to ride the flow, don't you?
Yeah, I'm of that
You just
opinion.
want 1 or 2 pointers, and then, you know, you can pick up on the next one, don't you?
Yeah. What shall I ask you about? This is a general question that I ask most people. So you've got the past, the present, and the future. Which one do you find at this time in your life do you think about the most? When you're just pottering about at your house, doing your things at the farm, what do you think about?
Probably the past.
Yeah.
And that's not a healthy answer. It should really be more about the future.
Yeah. I think it's an age thing.
I think it is. And a good friend of mine that worked in this really successful business, a good friend of mine, I can remember him saying, he said he was talking to his grandfather one day, and his grandfather said, do as much as you can, have as much fun as you can, because when you got to my age, all you've got is memories. And so you just need to make as many memories as you can.
Right, okay.
And I thought that was particularly good advice.
Yeah, because you'll be thinking about them for a while.
Well, you will, yeah. That's what you're left with, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it makes complete sense to me, because when I speak to people, it tends to be young people are thinking about the future and older people are thinking about the past.
They are, yeah.
And it's interesting. It's interesting. Don't really know what to make of it yet.
Well, one of my worst traits is, as I have done with this knee, I won't do things because of my knee. I don't know what's happening with my knee. I've got this knee operation. I don't know how I'll be after it. So I'm not doing things like going on holiday or doing building projects or whatever it might be. I just keep putting stuff off, and I shouldn't. Yeah.
You want to try and push through it.
Yeah,
Yeah. How long did you have issues with your knee then? For quite a while.
Excuse me. Yeah, about 4 years.
Yeah, just been giving you.
It's all the meat out of the sandwich is gone, so it's just bone on bone.
Yeah.
And
there's a guy at our place who's a keen he used to be a very keen footballer, and now he's got to have both done. And
he's having them done at the same time, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's a brave move. That is.
Yeah, he seems to be happy to do it.
I don't know how you get back on your feet and get your balance back.
Because you wouldn't be able to walk about.
No.
With both, would you?
No.
Done.
No, you wouldn't.
You just sort of need the other one to support you to get the other one better. So.
Exactly, yeah. So I have heard of one or two folks that have had it done, but and successfully, but I don't know how you cope with it. I really don't, Andy.
Yeah. How many friends does a person need, Andy?
I don't know.
How many friends do you need?
I'm lucky with friends.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this quite a lot of late.
Yeah.
So I've got two friends who I've been friendly with for over 40 years, more like nearly 50 years actually. Yeah. And I see them twice every week, once on a Sunday night and once on a Wednesday night. Yeah. It happens to be at the pub. Yeah. So there's three of us, but also, I don't know, 30 years ago, three other guys came along, sort of, they come along to the pub as well. And we formed a cycling team group, whatever. It's not racing or...
Little clan.
Yeah, it's not... Yeah,
you're just doing
competitive. All we used to do was go out for a cycle ride on a Sunday morning. Yeah. And did do for donkey's years. Yeah. And the order of the day was... we were mates, which basically means that you go for a drink...
It's mainly about the friendship, isn't it?
It is about the friendship, A strong essence of it is taking the piss out of each other. And we have a motto, which the motto is, why help when you can ridicule?
Yeah. It's a form of help.
Yeah, it is. So it's mostly about having fun and having a laugh. And it has been that way for 30, 40 odd years.
Yeah, nice.
But now it's beginning to change. So some of it are going through periods of their life that are not as easy as they were previously. I've split up with Lee, which I found very difficult. Yeah. Another guy split up with his wife. He's got trouble at work. Yeah. Another guy's quite ill and his wife's very seriously ill. Yeah. And it's turned from being a sort of laughing, joking, matey thing to being quite supportive friends, and it's going through quite a nice transfiguration, really, if you like, and it's nice to see it happening.
You're happy about that you're all there for each other?
I think we are, and increasingly we have conversations of that nature to say
a bit more serious. But
I don't know what to, people will say, I don't know what I'd have done in the last 18 months if it hadn't been for you lot.
Yeah. And COVID and everything.
Yeah, exactly, and we all refer to it as our second family, and nice. It is. Yeah,
so it's quite a small group then, really.
It is. Yeah.
You don't need too many friends; you just need a few good ones.
You do. Yeah, you do. I've got other good friends as well, but I'd have to say that I look at this group and you look at other people, and I know there are other people that I used to work with and what have you, and I think to myself, they haven't got this. And I have, and I'm pretty lucky, really. Yeah. Yeah.
Being sort of grateful for faith.
Yeah. And when the other 5 of them listen to this and hear me saying this, they'll mercilessly rip the piss out of me afterwards.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Got to be truthful.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it, I don't think, if you talk about it.
No, you can't.
Kind of one-on-one with someone you don't really know. It's like, I don't know. It's interesting. You think they'll all listen to it?
I don't know, actually. Only if I tell them.
Yeah, you tell them. Yeah. Do they know anything about it at the moment?
One of them does.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you told him to keep a secret, you might as well put it on the front page of the Times.
Really?
Yeah.
What did he think of it?
He thought it was a good idea. He said, "I bet you'd be good at that. Actually, doing that."
What does he do?
he's retired as well. So he used to be a heating and ventilating engineer.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
So they're all different sorts. So this group of 6, one was two of them were truck salesmen, selling trucks.
Yeah.
One was a heating and ventilating engineer. Another one was, he's the last bloke you wanted to see turn up on your doorstep. We're working. He was a liquidator. So when businesses got into trouble, he used to turn up on the doorstep and liquidate them. The other one's a plumber, and then there's me.
Yeah.
And all the rest of them. So they didn't
quite a random bunch.
It is a random bunch. I think that it makes a good mix, actually.
Yeah, you can all talk about your specific niches. Like,
yeah.
That's the interesting thing about today. Is like you were saying, the present day. You were saying how people's jobs over time have like diversified and stuff, and now everyone's just like a specialist in a very specific area. Right?
Yeah.
Really, really specific.
Yeah.
And it's that's part of the reason I'm doing this, is because like there's so much to learn from different people in their jobs, and just different approaches to work and things. I'm not really saying anything, am I? I'm sort of just saying it's interesting how specialised.
No, you are.
How specialised it all is now. It's people have got such specific jobs. It's like my job. I design products for a small business, and I don't just make motorcycle accessories. I make a specific version of motorcycle accessories. It's all body work and mud guards and things.
Yeah.
And it's just like all these little niches that people are in. I find it fascinating. It's interesting to learn about it. Probably part of the reason why I listen to so many podcasts, really.
Yeah.
Scientists, like you said earlier, you find scientists to be interesting people to know and good people to work with. I like listening to scientists talk about fusion and stuff like that. I don't know, physics and aliens and stuff like that.
It's the way of thinking that it's they've developed a way of thinking that's to do with their background, really, the science that they're involved in.
Yeah.
And it's that way of thinking that I find fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Much broader sort of.
Well, it's the discipline to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many of us are woolly about things. People find it very difficult to articulate something clearly.
Yeah.
People find it very difficult to distill black and white.
Yeah.
Distinguish between black and white, but also distill something so that you've got one single clear decision to make about something.
Yeah.
And some of the most fascinating people I've worked with have been the people that can actually get to the crux of something quite quickly and figure out what the key things are and what key decisions you've got to make. So it's that type of thinking that I found the most fascinating.
Clinical thinking.
Yeah. So, there's a guy that I used to work with. Well, he's the chancellor of the university that's next door to us, and he was chairman of Burberry, chairman of Experian, chairman of Standard Chartered Bank. He's chancellor of the Nottingham University. He's still doing all these things. One of the clearest thinkers I've ever met. And just watching him in action was fascinating.
Yeah. Being around him.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of role models growing up, or I suppose most people say their parents. But I suppose.
I sort of fell at the first hurdle with role models of my dad because he was an academic and I couldn't. Basically. You get role models in football, Bobby Charlton.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You have a massive role when you're young and you're really into the first thing you're into, which is in football. It's like you have a role model and someone to sort of aspire to, don't you?
Yeah.
And you want to be like, it's funny, that period of your life when you first start to get into something like that. And you sort of fully fall for it. For me, it was music and a particular musician.
Yeah, who was that then?
He's called Aphex Twin. He's like an electronic musician.
Yeah.
And I actually heard about him through another musician I liked, the guitarist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And he said, I really like this guy. And I was like, that's interesting. So I sort of went through. And I just fell in love with this guy's music and just sort of wanted to be him for a bit, And eventually you realise that you got to cut your own path and do your own thing.
Yeah.
But it's I really enjoyed that. It was like my first sort of
You're both quite musical, you and Adam, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think
it's something you enjoy, isn't it?
Yeah, really. Yeah, I really enjoy. We enjoy quite different music, I think, but I'm definitely into it because of him.
Really,
because he was all about it when he was young, and when he was sort of 16, he was really into it, and I just sort of. Yeah, I think I've followed my brother a lot in that way.
I mean, one of the other regrets in my life really, and is I haven't spent any. I've got all these hobbies, keeping cattle, growing vegetables, making cider, all that sort of stuff. But I haven't got music's quite a way of relaxing, isn't it? And being yourself. It's quite a sort of. It's taking time out for yourself. I suppose things like painting and things like that as well can do that, and I've never really had anything like that.
No,
I've always
like creativity. You mean?
Well, probably. I don't think I've really allowed myself the time to take time out. I've always just been driven to do more and more and more and more.
Really?
Yeah. And it's I think it's very healthy. The sort of thing that you and Adam do in terms of taking time out to your music.
Yeah. I sort of feel like this has replaced that a little bit for me at the moment.
Really?
I just haven't got enough time. But I use a lot of the music in the podcast just because I've made so many different little tunes and stuff. But I think it's nice to have something outside of work that's like a driving thing as well.
Yeah.
Just keeps your mind fresh. I think. I don't know. You need variety, don't you? You need variety, and it's. I don't know.
Yeah, you also need to, I think, have something that at the end of the day you can draw some satisfaction from and feel good about it.
Yeah.
And music's like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very satisfying to make music and just to listen to music, like you say. Just listening to a good album that you really enjoy and like sort of sitting down and properly listening to it.
Yeah.
It's good, yeah. So you've not really been massively into music through your life then? It's sort of just been there.
When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I used to go with all my mates to see quite a lot of bands. And but then it gets more difficult when family life appears really to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, going to gigs.
Yeah, I used to go to gigs most weekends and whatever. I used to enjoy that.
Sort of local stuff.
Some of it was local, yeah. There was a band called Gaffer that used to be on in Nottingham on a Tuesday night. Was it Tuesday night or a Thursday night? I can't remember. It was a Tuesday night. Used to go down and watch them. They were good. They were just a local band. Yeah. And they've been on for years, and I like them.
It's good though, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, yeah.
I like doing stuff like that. Yeah, it's good. I don't do it enough, to be fair. Live music. I mean, Adam, my brother, played a lot of live music. Yeah. That's the difference between him and me, really, is that I did a lot of music with my friend at home, really. Yeah. Bedroom music, I suppose they'd call it. Yeah. And that's the big difference. But I think he got a big buzz out of like playing live in front of people and stuff. And did some music with him for the first time ever. Really, did some music with him recently, and he put it on like Spotify and all the streaming services and stuff. And I really enjoyed working with him. Actually, it was me and him, and then his friend who he used to play with, his father, who was really into music as well. Yeah. And that was a good sort of dynamic because me and him are quite young. He's sort of 30 and I'm 26, and then this guy's I guess Martin's like 70 maybe, and completely different approach to music, because he grew up in a completely different time. Yeah. So it was great actually working with people on it and collaborating. It's good fun. Yeah, creativity. It's a struggle though at the same time. Yeah. It can feel very pointless. Yeah. Because there's nothing that tangible with music. No, there isn't. Yeah. But getting stuck into like an actual job where you go and make something that you sell, it's a different thing. Yeah. But when you do get it right, it's immensely satisfying, I imagine. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun. What's your favourite country that you've been to, that you've travelled to? Or maybe not one specific, but if you've got a few, maybe. I worked a lot in Australia, Sydney mostly, Sydney and Melbourne. Yeah. It's a wonderful style of life out there. I love the people, love the country. It's great. And
but for the fact that I've got my roots here, quite happy to have my roots here. I could easily have lived in Sydney. I think it's a great place.
Yeah.
But the most fascinating place is India. So I used to work in India a lot as well.
Yeah.
And I spent months out there, and it's like stepping onto a different planet.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the rules that prevail elsewhere don't. Every moment you get surprises, and there's lots of stuff that you don't understand.
Yeah.
There's such a contrast between the sort of super rich there and the abject poor. There's begging and the sort of kids that are mutilated so that they can beg more effectively.
Yeah. Wow.
Sacred cows wandering about the streets, bumping into your taxi or eating out of rubbish bins. It's a long time since I've been. It's probably 6 years since I was last in Delhi.
Yeah.
But I've worked around various places.
When did you first go to India then?
Be about 2000. No, it would be about 1996 or 7. Yeah.
Cool place.
It is, yeah. It's
Quite chaotic place.
You can't really figure out how it works,
Yeah.
but it does.
Yeah.
And no sensible Westerner really would go out there and hire a car to drive, because it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Indian drivers are immensely skilled. So you get a 3-lane road and it's got 7 lanes of traffic on it. They cram into it. And I remember being driven by this guy called Peter round Delhi, and we'd pull up at a set of lights, and there's queues of stuff all over the place. And he just put his hand on the hooter and leave it there. Eventually I said to him, Peter, I noticed you put your hand on the hooter that every time we pull up somewhere. And I said, what's the reason for that? Well, I can't rightly tell you, sir. He said, but unless I do it, I'm not feeling comfortable.
He has to do it.
Yes.
It's just what they do there.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone's just
and I
constantly
think that explains quite a lot about India, that, there's a lot of stuff going off, but...
it's just the style of the place.
It is, yeah.
Almost.
The sort of caste system and things like that.
Yeah.
I can remember being on a railway carriage once, and there were some Americans behind us, and clearly the railway carriages were caste dependent, so it depends what caste you were in as to which railway carriage you got into.
Right.
And this American guy behind us said to one of the Indians, said, well, where's so-and-so gone? Another Indian. Right, well, he's not allowed on this carriage, so he had to go on another carriage. So there's this caste system that I'd never really fathomed out.
No. Much stronger and more apparent than it is in other places.
It is, yeah. Well, it's a form of apartheid, I think, really. Yeah.
Remember Africa being a bit like that.
Yes, because you've had one or two interesting trips down West Africa, haven't you?
Yeah, we drove down to... He did it 3 times, actually.
Yeah. Brave man.
Yeah, on his own. Well, not on his own the first time. Did it with a friend the first time, a school friend.
Simon?
Yeah, Simon, yeah. You met Simon?
Yeah, but the Christmas in July at Netlham.
Yeah, I think Yeah, you did, didn't you? Yeah. Was I like that?
Yeah, you were well oiled, but I can remember being there, even if you can't.
I can't remember anything. I've got an awful memory. I've got terrible memory.
That's why you do these, so you can remember people.
It's nice to listen back to them sometimes, just to remind myself of what I've said to people and what they said to me. That was cool. That was good, that. Didn't know what to expect. I was 10 when I did it. So it was pretty crazy. And we did it with a few people as well. So we did it with my dad's girlfriend at the time, and her daughter and her son as well. So her daughter was my age and her son was sort of Adam's age, so sort of 16 maybe.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was completely wild.
Your dad was doing a good thing though, in that he was taking buses out there for the good use out in West Africa, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Was it charity use?
Well, it was really, but he wasn't doing it under any sort of proper organisation. He was just doing it.
Yeah.
And he met people. He met a guy called Keba down there, who now lives in Italy. Actually, he actually travelled.
He's mentioned him to me. Actually, your dad has. Yeah.
Interesting guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd go down. And we went down there in the van. Travelled all the way down there. I think it's sort of 4,000 k maybe. No, it's more than that, isn't it? Can't remember now. And he just got there, met Keba, because he knew Keba by that time when we'd gone. This was the second time we'd gone. And we just sort of spent a couple of weeks with him. living in his hut and stuff. And
Really?
Yeah, travelling to the main city, which was interesting, Banjul in Gambia, and going on the ferry. And then, yeah, he just left the van with them, and they'd sort of use it. And I remember he showed me the previous van he'd taken, and it was like, you know, it looked like it had been there for a while. And but yeah, it's just a different way of life, you know. People come round together, they have fish and rice on a big platter.
Yeah.
They just have it. They all sit round together, you know, sort of 12 of them, two adults and 10 kids. And they're just sort of digging in together, having a great time.
Yeah.
They're just so happy there.
Really?
Yeah, they're just really happy. I remember playing football with them. They had a dusty football pitch right behind their hut.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're probably very happy because you're there and you've got money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're just nice people to be around. And
yeah.
They really do. This guy was sort of an unofficial. This Kevin was a sort of unofficial guide, and he'd just sort of show you around everywhere and things like that. But yeah, we did that. Left the van there and flew back.
Yeah.
And I was probably there. The whole trip was probably sort of 7 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Amazing.
Seen happiness of that sort in Mexico when I went on holiday when I was 19.
Yeah.
You know, and I can remember my auntie and uncle who lived out there, who I was staying with, saying, "Oh, they've got sunshine. That's one of the main reasons for being happy." And there's a degree of truth in that. Having worked in Sweden and Finland a lot, where they don't see a great deal of sunshine, you know, I say you see the opposite side to it.
Really?
Oh yeah. But then, you know, I've been to places that are sunny. Like India, you wouldn't describe the natural disposition of people there as happy.
No.
More, I won't say downtrodden, but certainly life's difficult. It's an uphill struggle. Yeah. There isn't much to enjoy. Having said that, you know, you see it on the cricket pitches around the big cities, and you know they're all obviously enjoying themselves there, but
it's very densely populated.
It is very densely populated, and I think there's an awful lot of not very nice things happen really there. You know, there's a lot of people that don't particularly enjoy life.
Gambia is pretty. It's not that densely populated really. And it's kind of, I think it's. I don't know. It's hard. It's been such a long time, and I was 10 when I was there, so I've got a very strange view of it, I suppose. But like, it'd be interesting to go back again and see it again. I remember when we went there, that was just sort of like people were just getting mobile phones, you know, and they'd been around for a while, and it's just like stepping back in time in a way. Yeah. So anywhere you've not been that you'd like to go, or have you been?
South America. I've been to Mexico, but I've never been to South America.
Proper South America.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Chile. You know, that's one of the places I'd most like to go to, for all sorts of reasons. You know. But no, because when I was at Xperion, you know, I had the opportunity to travel to most places.
Yeah.
So you know, I did a lot in Asia, North America, Africa. Well, South Africa only actually. Australia and what have you, but never got to South America. It was a bit of a regret. So I was lucky. You know, I mean, I ended up working in 40 different countries. But I didn't get to South America too bad.
You got to go and
do it then. Fund that myself,
yeah, why not? Yeah. What's it been like bringing up 3 girls?
A privilege. I have to say they're great. You know, I couldn't be prouder of them. I really couldn't. They're 3 lovely ladies now. They really are. Yeah. And you know, as I said earlier, I wasn't always present, so you know it was their mum Lee that you know did a lot of the work there. Yeah. But no, they've been great, and they continue to be great and very kind to me as well, all of them. Yeah. And now we've got 4 grandchildren, and they've all got families of their own, so it's lovely. Yeah,
must be strange to see that happening.
It is, yeah. I think I hope I've got this right. I truly believe I have, but you know. It's actually nice seeing them with partners who are nice,
Yeah.
You know, I've got a number of friends, you know, part of the group of 6. You know, they some of their kids have not done well with their partners. You know, it's been unfortunate.
Yeah, get on with them and not have
but you know, I have to say that all 3 girls have, you know, ended up with folks who I like, you know, and I think are good.
Yeah.
You know,
you're lucky then, really.
Yeah,
It's 3 chances.
yes, it is lucky, but you know, and I think a lot of that's down to the girls actually.
Yeah,
You know, they've all got their heads screwed on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's cool. That's interesting. Yeah, I think Adam's a good lad.
He is. No,
I would say he is.
Yeah, no,
obviously.
I do like him, but you know, so we've got 2 Adams. Adam Sharrett is Sophie's husband. Adam Bowser's Emily's boyfriend, and then we've got Jim, who's Alex's husband.
Yeah,
no, they're all great, and the kids are
Jim
good as well. Yeah.
He's a good laugh, Jim.
He is a good laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's coming along tonight for the Sunday night drink. He's because he works 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
But he's a Cross Channel Ferry officer.
Yeah.
And when he's 2 weeks off, he sometimes comes for a pint with us. So,
I'll have to speak to him about that at some point.
That'd
be
be a good one, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Been a bit nervous to ask him.
No, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
Yeah.
No, he'd love it.
Yeah.
He would absolutely love it.
Yeah.
They did a Channel 4 documentary on his ship when he was on board.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't feature in it too much.
No.
His captain featured in it more than he did.
Mainly about the boat, though.
Yeah, it was. You know, I mean, you know, immigration, the challenge that they have on a daily basis.
Was it not that long ago then, really? Or?
I would think it's 4 years ago, something like that.
Maybe
a bit longer. Yeah. Maybe a bit longer. Yeah. So he works for DFDS, the ferry company. So if you have a look for that, I think it was Channel 4 that made the documentary. It was good. Yeah. But you know, I mean, he has challenges on a daily basis. Jim does, and you know, I'm guessing that he probably doesn't appreciate how interesting the rest of us might find it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think a lot of people feel like that about their jobs, maybe.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
That's not interesting. Why would you care about that? But
yeah,
it's like someone was asking me about mine yesterday, and I said, "Oh, you know, it's simple, really. Just do this, this, and this." He's like, and Vince, who I was speaking to, he said, "It's not simple. I don't know what you're on about." So I had to sort of go back and explain it, and it's just like, yeah, it's interesting because I've never, you know, you do it every day. You just think it's boring, don't you? You know, driving a ferry across the water, it might not seem that interesting, but I think people would find that quite interesting. Actually, it probably would be a good one to do if he's up for it. I'll have to ask him. I'll have to pluck up the courage.
He would be, Andy. In fact, I'll mention it to him tonight. I'll say to him tonight, you ought to do one. Andy'd be very interested and see what he says.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Bit of a tricky one, but and if you don't want to answer it, just say and I'll cut it out. But what do you worry about?
Quite a lot, actually. More than I should do.
Bit of a worrier.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, that's probably one of the worst things that Lee worries too. And I think that's probably one of the worst things that we passed on to the kids, that they all worry more than they should do. Which is the flip side to confidence. You know, confident people tend to worry less, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, and I think Alex in particular has done a lot with her kids to try and make them confident. And I'm sure that Emily, who's got Benjo, who's younger than Alex's kids, and Sophie, who's got Edie, who's younger than Benjo even, they will try and do the same. Yeah. But instilling confidence in your kids is giving your kids confidence is one of the best things that you could ever give them.
Being positive.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, Lee and I are both natural worriers, and it's quite difficult when you're a natural worrier to sort of give confidence sometimes. So, what do I worry about?
Too many things to choose from.
Well, yeah, but stupid things though, like, you know, my tax return's not due until next January, and I'm worried. It's on the side there and it's whittling away at me. I've got things to sort out with my pension for me and Lee, and it'll be all right. We've got enough money, but I whittle about that.
You know you can do it, but you worry about it because you haven't done it.
Exactly. Yeah, you know, and you know, I should just try and get all this crap out of the way and then spend more time enjoying myself. But it's not in my nature sometimes.
Just fixate on them. I think about it a lot, and I've heard people say things, especially listening to podcasts, like different people talking about it and like confidence in yourself and stuff. And it is literally just a state of mind. Like I think you can well, that's my opinion of it. I feel like if you can just have the right feeling about confidence and sort of not worrying, if you can push yourself to sort of be positive in the moment, then you'll be all right. But it's hard to do sometimes. Even for me personally, with doing this, like this doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if I do this or not.
No.
But I'll sort of say, you're not very good at this, are you? You're not very good at doing that.
I think you are, actually.
And then I'll say to myself, yeah, but it doesn't matter because no one cares if you aren't any good at it. So just do it. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
Well, yeah. And if it's a good experience for you, do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing I get from it. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that sort of that mental block and that sort of beating yourself up or worrying about stuff. It's kind of, if you just don't worry and do it, you'll be okay. But it's hard to do that sometimes.
It is. I mean, the flip side is I've known monumentally stupid but very confident people.
Yeah.
And they're just the world's worst people to deal with. You know, they're awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah.
I couldn't bear to, think that I'd be like that. I mean, because of the jobs that I've had to be confident at work.
Yeah.
You know, even standing up and giving speeches to hundreds of people and talking about things that are going to happen and, what you're going to do for clients or what you're going to do for them and whatever. You've got to be confident about that sort of stuff. But
decisive,
I mean, every big initiative or particularly speeches that I had to give, I've, crapping myself beforehand, sort of thing, The worst ones, actually, funnily enough, were weddings, the Alex and Sophie's weddings. Yeah. I was talking to, so I've talked to groups of thousands of people before. But this was in each case 120 people, and I was doing a speech to them and their friends and the families. I was shaking like a leaf. I had to put the piece of paper down on the table because I couldn't read it. I was shaking so much.
That's one of your most nervous moments.
Really. The two worst speeches, the two most challenging speeches I've ever done were Alex's wedding and Sophie's wedding. Yeah.
You feel good after doing it then?
Yeah. I put hours, days, weeks of work and practice into it, writing it up, speaking it, recording it,
drafting it,
changing it, listening back to it, until I got it exactly where I wanted it to be, jokes where I wanted and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But even though I'd done all that preparation work for it, I was absolutely quaking before I stood up and did it. Yeah.
Maybe you built it up so much that all that work as well.
Yeah. But no, at the end of it, I was very pleased indeed I'd done it. Yeah.
Amazing. That's interesting. One thing that Emily mentioned to me was that your grandfather used to drive a locomotive.
He did. Yeah. And so was Emily. So my dad's father, my papa Frank, was a locomotive driver. He came from North Derbyshire. He was one of the ones that came from North Derbyshire. Ironbridge. And he and his brother Johnny got jobs driving steam trains. And he ended up, as his brother Johnny did, and a lot of others, I'm sure, people in your family too, in the First World War, in the trenches. And he was in the Battle of the Somme, which was horrible. And he got the opportunity to, they were looking for, because the trenches were supplied from the back by troop trains, and they were looking for train drivers. And so he, in the end, managed to get out of the trenches, and he was driving trains to in France. And then came back and he was driving trains for GNR, I think it was. Or it might have been LMR, can't remember. But it wasn't a particularly exotic route. He used to drive the fish trains from Nottingham to Hull and back. So he used to bring all the fish back from Hull. And then my dad, so they used to live at a place called Highbury Vale, Bedford Grove. And at the bottom of their street, it was a dead end, the train line used to go past that me Papa Frank and his brother Johnny used to drive on. And they used to stop there when my dad was out of school. So as a child, health and safety these days, I wouldn't enter into it. As a child, quite a young child actually, I think 7 or 8, he'd get on the footplate and he'd drive the train into Nottingham.
Wow.
Yeah, and he used to do this on a fairly regular basis. So my dad, at a very early age, knew his way around the steam train.
Awesome, that's amazing.
And for his 60th birthday, he went down to the Grand Central Railway, which is at Loughborough, and then had a day's steam train driving. And for my 60th birthday, I went down to the same place and did the same thing. It was great. And Emily came with me, and she drove the train too.
Yeah. So shoveling coal in, and was it that kind of train, like steam train?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so when you was
so sorry, I got quite emotional about it, Andy.
that's all right.
Yeah. So we need to get Benji to drive that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. Yeah, me too. What's the meaning of life, Andy, to you?
Christ, no.
It's my last question.
That's a sobering one.
My last question.
Well, lots of things. Family's important, friends, behaving in a certain way, being considerate. I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a religious person, but I think a lot of the world's religions, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, have views on what's right, the right ways to behave.
Morals and stuff.
Yeah, how you treat other people.
Yeah.
How you should behave. A lot of those things are important. I'm quite honest. I'm sure the same for a lot of us, but we don't always measure up to the mark. And it's difficult when you don't.
Yeah.
So those are the most important things for me, really.
Yeah. Family's up there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, right up there. Very, very much up there.
Yeah. Tricky question, I know. A lot of people.
No, you really threw me with that one. I haven't really thought that one through before you came to me with it.
I ask everyone right at the end, so it's. Don't think people who listen to it before I do it, they probably don't get to that point. So it's like, it's someone else asks it actually that I listen to, and I always like the answer that people give. It's interesting. It's so varied, but at the same time, a lot of people say family, but it's coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah,
it's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
I suppose it's just to sort of learn things, isn't it? And appreciate
it is.
People.
Yeah.
Be nice to people and treat them as you'd like to.
Well, I think the way that you behave to other people is quite important.
Yeah.
But I probably need to reflect on the fact that I've been very lucky as well.
Yeah.
In lots of respect, parents, ways I was brought up, the country I live in, the education I've had, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Most of the people that live in this country are lucky.
Everyone's so used to their lives, aren't they? It's hard to do that. But when you do stop and think about it, it's like living in a sort of, I suppose someone of my age who's, I've not had many issues in my life and been very lucky. You sort of, when you think about it, it's just a dream, really. All of this.
My generation, we talk about this. So, my six mates that we go out every Wednesday night. We've reached a stage now where we have to limit the medical discussion to 20 minutes because that takes over the conversation if we don't watch it. So medical update for all of us, it takes about 20 minutes.
Get it out of the way.
Get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But then one of the other topics is, aren't we lucky? So, and aren't we lucky? First generation that's not been through a war.
Yeah.
And not had to go to do national service, haven't had rationing to deal with. There's always been plenty of food on the table for most people. It's a good social society and welfare society that looks after folks, and having worked in various places around the world, and you think back to previous generation, God, we're lucky. We really are lucky.
Yeah. Especially, like, say, war is the main one, isn't it, really?
It is,
having to go through that changes your whole existence, doesn't it?
It does,
Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. I mean, it's happening in some places, isn't it? But
it is, yeah.
Hopefully it's not sort of worldwide.
No, I think that's, you get all this stuff on the 11th of November, Armistice Day. And you really got to try and. It's a distant thing for everybody these days, but you've got to remember it is important, really.
It dominated people's lives at one point.
It did, yeah. Oh, ended some people's lives as well, didn't it? Yeah.
Thanks for talking to me, Andy. Really enjoyed it.
I have too. Yeah. Nice. Well, more than I imagined I could have done. Not that I was thinking anything bad, but
didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Nice one.
All right. Cheers.
Big thanks to Andy for coming on the podcast and expressing his opinions and experiences and things and being open to it. That's always helpful for a podcast. Thanks very much for that, and join me again for another one in the future.